Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order for the City of Walker Planning Commission. And the first item is, that's not on the agenda, but we've got Mayor Carey here to make a presentations this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So normally this is that magic time of the year when we have Years of Service Awards. Normally we ask our committee members for planning, CBA, community development, all that, to come to a city commission meeting, spend more of your personal time to come here, sit in the audience, and then present the award while we all sit up there. And I thought, and I think to the faces up here, these are appointed positions, so each one of you either I've appointed or reappointed, and I think I asked that sacrifice out of you. I thought the least I can do is I'm going to come visit you tonight. So we're going to start a new tradition this year, so I'm going to come visit the committee. So I have actually 3 years of service. Jason's not here this evening, but I have 2 here. But, really I'll be brief here in the comments. This applies to everybody up here. What we ask of you, the city asks of you, is obviously we all know very critical, especially in a city with the high growth rate that we have right now. The smoothness of how you run through the process here, you make our jobs a lot easier on Monday night, and I can't say thank you enough on behalf of the City Commission. And it's not just the Wednesday nights that you show up for, it's all the pre-planning, it's the site visits, it's the packet preparation that you're reading and studying that, reaching out with questions. This is something, it takes a lot of time, and it's not just those Wednesday night meetings. So just again, on behalf of the city, thank you very much. So when we get to do Years of Service Awards like this, it's a pretty special thing, because it means that you've put a lot of your personal interests aside to serve the community. And not many people want to do that nowadays, so it's a pretty special thing. So that being said, with the chair's permission, I'd like to approach the dais in a moment. And I have Patrick Laurie and Mark Davey both celebrating a 5-year anniversary serving on the Planning Commission. I've been a part of reappointments with both of you. You guys have been outstanding. I just, again, can't say thank you enough. Same applies to Jason while he's not here. So if we could just a quick round of applause for 5 years for you guys. So.
Is this a free tax? I don't have to pay taxes, city taxes?
It's coming later.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
do have a mayor's salary. No, thank you again, and for our guests in the audience, it's very customary for us when we hit 5 and 10 year increments. There's Years of Service Awards that we share with our city employees, and while not full-time staff, any of us are, except the 2 on the end here, these are full-time jobs that we have serving the city. So thank you again. I'm going to get out of your hair for the next. I know we have a lot on the agenda. Mark and both Pat, thank you again for your years of service. So thanks again.
All right. First item on the regular agenda now, looking at the meeting minutes for December 15. Any comments, corrections? Motion?
I make a motion to accept.
Support. Motion by Tyler, supported by Steve, to approve the minutes from December 15, 2021. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, general public comment. If we have anybody here that's wishes to speak on a non-agenda item, this is an opportunity to come forward and share your thoughts, concerns. No takers. We'll go right into the next item. The first agenda item deals with case number 21-034. It's a highway facing sign review, 2710 Northridge Drive, Northwest. Tricia, as the planning director, could you introduce this, please?
Yep, thanks, Terry. So the applicant is SunMed, and they are located at 2710 Northridge Drive. And they are applying for a highway facing sign. The lot is about 15 acres. It's zoned industrial park. Future land use designation is community enterprise. Community character designation is neighborhood node. The general location of the project site is on the southeast corner of Northridge Drive and Peach Ridge Avenue. And we had Chris Hyink, who submitted the application, and we have Jack, I'm so sorry, with Universal Sign Systems with us tonight. And so the action requested by the Planning Commission is to review the site plan for the 52.56 square foot wall sign for SunMed that faces I-96 and to grant approval with or without conditions, tabling, or denial of the request. So just a little bit of background. You may remember that the Planning Commission approved some site improvements for this particular site back in July of 2020. And they also did some major interior renovations. And it's a multi-tenant building, and SunMed occupies the majority of that space. And there's no other existing wall signage on that building. So 94-411D111, I'm sorry, 7, signs in office and industrial districts requires Planning Commission approval for any wall signage that faces the highway. And so the ordinance says also that the wall-mounted signage that faces the highway has to be subtracted from the overall total amount of signage allowed on the wall for that development. And so this one is kind of easy because there are no other signs on the building. As far as we know, there are no other signs proposed, but this sign is small enough to where if somebody did want to propose their own sign, somebody from one of the other tenant spaces, there would still be some square footage left in the bank. So this is the view of the building from I-96, 196. And this is what it looks like. It's 52.65 square feet. And they plan to put it right above the truck docks there. So this one's pretty easy, and I'm recommending that the Planning Commission approve the sign for SunMed that's facing the highway as proposed.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. We won't call upon Scott because I don't think he's got any comments upon this. All right. At this point, we'll give an opportunity for Mr. Voss to come forward and offer any comments as well.
Jack Voss, 15286 Hoffman Drive, Grand Haven, Michigan. I have nothing more to add other than that they would like to get some exposure from the highway and just let more people know that they're in the area. We went through a pretty thorough process with the owner of the building to downsize our sign so that he had signage left for other tenants in the building. So I think that there's some pretty good forethought in that. And then worked with Tricia just to make sure that we were complying as best we could.
Okay. Any comments, questions for Mr. Voss? All right, thank you. Any thoughts, motions?
I'll make a motion, case number 21-034, motion for SunMed highway facing wall signage. I make a motion to approve the 52.65 square foot sign on the south highway facing wall of the building located at 2710 Northridge Drive Northwest for SunMed as proposed.
Okay, we got a motion. Support by Mark. Any comments, questions? We'll go forward and call the question. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you very much. All right, the next item, this is a public hearing involving case number 21-035. It's a rezoning request for 4290 Lake Michigan Drive Northwest. And turn it over again to Tricia as the planning director to introduce the project.
Thank you, Terry. So the property address here is 4290 Lake Michigan Drive. And the project type is a rezone request and a site plan review. The lot size is approximately 1.6 acres. It's currently zoned SDD, Standale Downtown District. And the future land use designation here is mixed use with a community character designation of neighborhood node. The general location of the project is on the south side of Lake Michigan Drive between Cummings Avenue and Westtown Service Drive. The applicant is Reid, Cooksey, and Mitchell Harvey of Stonefield Engineering. We have Mitch with us tonight. And the action requested by the Planning Commission is number 1, to review the rezone from SDD Standale Downtown District to C1 Local Commercial, and to provide a recommendation to the City Commission for approval or denial of the rezone. And then the second request is to review the site plan for a 4,232 square foot medical office and to grant approval with or without conditions, tabling or denial of the request. So this is the existing conditions here at 4290 Lake Michigan Drive. Looks like it's ready for a new development. There's kind of a long history with this piece of property, and it was really interesting doing the research to find out, you know, what this piece has kind of been through over the years. It has had previous zoning as C3, C4. It's currently zoned SDD. I wasn't able to look back that far, but I would imagine that it was originally zoned residential in some way, just based on the fact that there was a house there. So this site has also seen a lot of different land uses, like RV sales. It was a trade contractor warehouse with like retail in a portion of the building. It was once a secondhand retail store, a health spa, multiple billiards retail operations there, and the last one was this 24/7 family fitness centers. And as I mentioned in my report, there was once, this was 2 parcels, and at some point in time it was combined, but the one parcel contained a single family home and an outbuilding, and that outbuilding was used as an auto repair shop for some time, and it was demoed, I think, in 1999. So no, the house was demoed in 1999, and the garage was demoed in 2013. So it's pretty interesting, some of the things that's happened here. It's a pretty good location in terms of visibility, access, you know, close to a lot of other amenities, and also some residential areas. So the first piece to this request is the rezone. And so when we look at a rezone request, I provided all of those different criteria that we want to take a look at to ensure that voting yes on a rezone is the right choice. So with this one in particular, of course, number 1 is the requested zoning district consistent with the master plan. And then the zoning district that's being requested is the range of land uses that's allowed in the proposed zoning district, are those appropriate, every single one of them, for that particular piece of property. And in this case, you know, this piece is zoned Standale Downtown. It could easily operate with land uses similar to those permitted in C1. C1 is a little bit more restrictive than SDD. As you know, regulated uses are one of those sticking points, and that's one that is allowed in the SDD. And so when we look at the goal and sort of vision for that Standale downtown district, we all know what we want the Standale downtown to look like, but we have several roadblocks in achieving that full implementation of our vision for that area for a really long time. One of the things that becomes a challenge in developing some of these older parcels under the Standale downtown district is that it's designed as sort of it's like a modified form-based code. We've got build to lines, and we've got certain facade standards in that district that we'd like to meet. But there are, it's not the Wild West with land uses. We do have specific land uses narrowed down to those primary and secondary and neighborhood frontage areas. One of the issues that we run into in the primary frontage areas is that we have lots of traffic. This is M45, there's a lot of cars moving through here. And back in the day, it must have been like, oh, you want a driveway here? Why don't you go ahead and hey, if you want 3 driveways, go ahead. There's a lot of driveways on Lake Michigan Drive. And so over time, I think the city has worked really hard to try and consolidate those driveways with some access management plans. And in the Standale Downtown District section of the ordinance, there's that section that says that the Planning Commission can waive certain design standards if it's, one of the criteria is if it's representation of the surrounding area. So for example, that O'Reilly's Auto Parts that we saw being proposed on that lot that was just north of Walgreens, that site had already kind of been laid out so that there was a service drive that connected to Walgreens, and it just didn't make sense for the development to be designed to meet that build to line with all the parking in the rear. And so we kind of reach those conclusions here on Lake Michigan Drive, where we want to get rid of a lot of these driveways, and we want to be able to connect from east-west these parcels that front Lake Michigan Drive. And for this section here, we actually have, and this is the Flag Star Bank, this is the subject site, this is the Mr. Car Wash, and this is the auto parts store, Taco Bell. We've gotten cross-access easements from most of those properties, and so this one is just, one of the last pieces to that puzzle in trying to achieve this, the goals of the access management plan. And so because of that, I believe that it makes a lot more sense to develop this site under C1 standards. And so staff is in support of the rezone from STD to C1. And so then when we look at the land uses, like I said earlier, the range of land uses for C1, I included all those land uses in my report to you. And again, you'll note that it's a little bit more restrictive than SDD. You're not going to see any of the residential uses that are permitted in the SDD, as well as some regulated uses. And the C1 zoning district is in line with the future land use and community character maps. So the future land use calls for mixed use all along this corridor. And then when we narrow it down to community character, we're looking at urban corridor, and C1 falls into that category as an appropriate zoning district, and that range of land uses as well. So this is what it currently looks like in terms of zoning. This is our site, Standale Downtown District all around. Are we going to see some changes with the Standale Downtown District with our upcoming ordinance rewrite, I'm guessing, probably, yeah. Because we all have this vision that we want to make this downtowny area. But I think it's gonna take a lot of ordinance amendments in order to really achieve that. But in the meantime, this site would be 100% appropriately designed under C1 standards. I just wanted to include the surrounding land uses, you know, all pretty much C1 uses, with the exception of a couple drive-throughs. I'm not sure how those snuck in there, but because those aren't permitted in Standale downtown. So I don't know what the history is there. But, you know, the proposed use as an urgent care center would fit nicely with the surrounding land uses. And so my recommendation for the rezone is that staff is supportive of the rezone request per all of those findings noted in my staff report in doing an analysis of each of those criteria. And then the site plan approval has to be subject to the condition that the city commission approval of the rezone request from SDD to C1 is approved. And also that the motion for the rezone recommendation to the city commission should be separate from the site plan motion. So now getting into the site plan review request, the second part of this. The applicant provided a demolition plan, which essentially shows that all of the pavement, all of the concrete, all of the buildings, and any structures will be removed from the site. And then the site plan here shows a new building. Like I said, this one would be torn down if the site plan is approved, and a new medical office building would be constructed with associated parking and cross-access connections to the parcels on the east and west side of Lake Michigan Drive frontage. They're also proposing the cross-access connection to Westtown Drive to the south of the site. And also some stormwater management infrastructure, which Scott will talk more in depth about. They're proposing new landscaping and a lot of landscaping, which is not there now. Lighting, parking spaces, ground mount signage, consolidation of the driveways, and a dumpster. So I'd like to call out some of the notable improvements that are being proposed here. So one of them is the sign. They plan to remove the existing pylon sign, which we're trying to move away from pylon signs in that area. They're not permitted in the SDD, but we would much rather see a ground mounted sign here, even though it's zone C1. Another one is the consolidation of those two driveways into one access point, and that aligns with our access management plan. And then the pink area here that you see would connect with the parcels on the east and the west to further that cross-access connection with an easement here they're proposing. They're also proposing, well, I just mentioned all the added landscaping, which wasn't there before. They're also proposing this south access drive, which would meet up with this existing Westtown service drive. And that's really great for added connectivity and cross access. So people over here at Aldi, they gotta make a stop at the urgent care center. They don't have to go out onto Wilson or onto Lake Michigan Drive. They just hop on the Westtown service drive and head over and travel south or north on this service drive. The applicant has pretty much met all of our comments and concerns in terms of the site plan. There was just one thing that I have to mention, and we see this quite often in this area for facades kind of like this. We don't want to see EIFS, or exterior insulated finish systems. And the reason for that is because it's in Michigan and in these, our long winters, we see this stuff deteriorate much more rapidly than we would see brick or block or some other material that's listed in our ordinance as permitted primary facade materials. So my one condition for changes is that the applicant revise the architectural drawings to include an acceptable facade material that's not EIFS. So my recommendation for the site plan is that the Planning Commission grant approval for the site plan and related improvements for the Well Now Urgent Care Medical Center, medical office, per the plan set last revision dated 1/4/2022. Subject to the following conditions. The approval of the site plan shall not take effect until after the City Commission approves the rezone request from SDD to C1. The applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 1/12/22. The applicant shall revise the architectural plans to provide an acceptable material in place of the proposed EIFS facade material for review and approval by staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. And the applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of civil engineered drawings incorporating the recommended revisions to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of a building permit. That's all for me.
Thank you, Tricia. Any comments or questions of Tricia on her presentation? Okay. Moved now to Scott Connors, our city engineer.
So no comments from us on the rezoning. We'll kind of stay in our own lane there and let you folks deliberate that. You do have a short memo from us with a couple of pictures and then also quite a few attachments to kind of help show and illustrate what we talked about in the report. The first item talks about the drainage. One of the concerns that we have here, if you look at the picture that's associated with that, is that the contours kind of show surface flow from the back side of the lots, from both the Flagstar lot and this lot, that kind of converge on a point in the back there, and that point has been low, obviously. There was a culvert that was built under the West Town driveway that kind of shows that it is a point that collects water, and we're concerned that this proposed driveway, as it's shown, could create a water pocket on the back of the Flagstar lot, and part of what we do here is try to look out for the neighbors and the community, obviously, so we want to make sure that that was looked at in a little bit more detail. If this was built as proposed, we think we'd end up with a couple of feet of water there that would stand for quite some time as it infiltrated slowly over time. The cross-access easement, we're very fortunate to have gotten a couple of those along this area. We want to make sure that the easement is dimensioned and shown, and I think this picture kind of illustrates the importance of getting that drawn up, because it's not straight east and west. There's 2 different, if you call them touchdown points, on the west property line and the east property line, so that easement will have to be written to surround kind of the aisle, and whether it's got a little curve or triangle in there, however they want to do that, we want to make sure that both east and west points are covered with the easement. You may notice that sidewalk in Standale is a little bit different than everywhere else. It's not just a 5-foot sidewalk with 5x5 slabs. We have a different pattern out there, and there's a picture in my report that shows that pattern, so we want to make sure that that is included in the plan. Otherwise, we'll get out there and we'll find out that it just didn't get put back that way, and it's just a 6x6 slab or something. It's mostly aesthetic, but it's really part of the DDA's identity, so we want to have that followed. I mentioned before that there was a cross culvert under the Cummings access drive. We did provide information on that, but we want to make sure that it's accurately shown on the plans. It's verified by their engineer, their surveyor, that it's got the pipe size, it's got the invert location. That's all a very important part of the drainage, knowing exactly where that is and at what elevation, so we want to make sure that's on there. There's a note on the south side of the plan that talks about possible wetland area per utility maps. And we agree that is a wetland area, or at least it was in 2018. When Westtown went in, there was a wetlands determination that confirmed that that was a significant amount of wetland. There was a permit. We attached the permit with our site plan review notes to help them along in either confirming that or getting a new determination. It's most likely that they'll have to get a new wetlands determination because they're only good for 3 years, unfortunately. And perhaps they'll get good news with that, but I think we want to make sure that we're not on the hook for endorsing something like that without mentioning the wetlands requirement. So that should be noted. And the applicant has chosen to use the new stormwater ordinance, which we're going to talk about here shortly tonight. What does that mean? It means that it's a little bit easier on redevelopment sites. So if you're building in a farm field or in a forested area, it's going to be a lot harder on you. If you're building in a site like this that's a lot of rooftop and pavement before, then there is a little bit of leniency, and that's actually one of the flaws in the ordinance, is that for redevelopments we don't get a chance to make up for the lack of detention, the lack of stormwater quality that we have. So in this case, it's not a slam dunk. There's still a few things to confirm in terms of the percent impervious, where the watershed boundary is today versus what they propose. Is there enough downstream infrastructure in place to support it? Because the pipes out there, at least to the north, I think it was only an 8 or 10 inch pipe, I can't remember, but it was undersized. So those things still need to be confirmed, but if they are, there is a little bit of lenience there on the detention. And then lastly, they don't get off the hook for the water quality. That's one of the things that there's no more variance allowed for with the new ordinance, so they have to meet that 100%, and they have proposed a water quality unit that meets it, I think as Rachel put it, exactly right to the number. So we got to validate all that because it's pretty rare that they would meet it exactly the number they're supposed to get. So we have to confirm that. So quite a few conditions related to grading and wetlands and things like that. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Pat?
Scott, on the cross access, which, we have that just in the same parking lot east of this, where cars can come in and then go up and down the street. Are we looking at any, like yield signs or signs to allow the traffic coming off Lake Michigan Drive have the right of way? Because I've almost got hit a couple times going into the other one down the street where you come in off Lake Michigan Drive and somebody's flying up, that cross access. Is there any talk of doing something like yield signs?
Not for us, no.
Okay.
The city doesn't have any control over the road.
Okay.
Technically, even the driveway is permitted through the state, and the easements are not written to the city. They're really written to neighboring property owners and the general public. I agree with you.
It's just a safety
It's not
thing, right?
ideal, but what we like about this is that they tend to be maybe a lower speed conflict point than you would have out in the road. So this generally is safer, generally is better.
Well, and the thing is that, you still got the cars coming past Wilson. They're still doing 45, 50 miles an hour when they hit this driveway. Versus if going further down past Cummings, they're a little bit slower. Most people are, but, so that's why I was just a little bit more worried about this one coming through a little bit higher speeds and then trying to take a right into this. And then cars doing the cross access, but I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, Pat, I just wanted to know, I agree with you, because we up in Alpine Township, they have something like that, where you ride kind of right along Alpine Avenue, where they've got the Panda Express and the gas station all the way up to the Walmart. A lot of yield signs through there, and I don't know, again, it's you say it's out of our purview, it's out of our purview, but it is something that makes for a nice safety addition to be conscientious of the traffic moving through there.
And maybe I should clear that up. When I say out of our purview, or imply that, I mean the city can't go out and put up a yield sign, maintain it, take care of it. That doesn't mean that you can't act as the planning commission on the site plan to say, we'd like you to put a stop bar here, we'd like you to put a directional sign here or there. Those kinds of things are still potential for the planning commission to consider and review.
Good point. Any other comments, questions? That possible wetland designation for the south portion of the lot. It's interesting on the grades in that area. it looks like there's a 1 or 2 foot at most differential. So it's the makeup of the soil underneath as opposed to the relative elevation of the property?
Well, wetlands are determined by the vegetation, not necessarily the soils. They generally have a consistent kind of soil that keeps the water on the surface. But a lot of times the developer will go out and make the property look a little bit more marketable by taking out all the vegetation, mowing things down, taking down the trees. And I think that might have been done here at one point when Westtown was out there. So it's hard to tell what is the vegetation right now because it's all 2, 3, 4 inches tall. So that's why I think a new wetlands determination is probably their best way to go, and maybe they'll get lucky and this won't be considered a wetland. Things do change over time, but it does seem to have an area of impoundment there. And I know when I was out there, on the west side of where that driveway would be, there's frozen water, a little pond that's been kind of started. So it's already starting to hold back water, and I think if the driveway goes across without a cross culvert of some type, then it could get worse.
That was what I was gonna ask. Can they put a culvert under the drive,
Yeah,
going east-west?
yes, they could.
Cause that's a real low spot back there. Of the whole lot, that's probably the lowest spot, so.
Any other comments, questions?
I'm always impressed with our staff here, what detail. I mean, we don't have to hardly do anything, and all the detail, it's a small lot, and all the detail, and both of these people have brought up, and we're a small community, and we got people like this working for us. I'm impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Well done.
This is going to, we'll have a public hearing, but it will give first an opportunity for the applicants to come forward and make a presentation on the project.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. It is a pleasure to appear in front of you again this evening. My name is Mitchell Harvey with Stonefield Engineering and Design. My address is 607 Shelby Street, Detroit, Michigan. Tonight with me is Bo Wynn with the Detroit Architectural Group, and we are here representing the applicant, Walker Retail Management 4. So, as Tricia mentioned, we're proposing 2 things tonight. The first would be the rezone from the Stonefield downtown district to the C1 local commercial. And really that originated from our first conversations with city staff regarding how we wanted to treat this project. And really we had arrived at a solution where it's not really in line with the Stonefield downtown district intent or regulations. And that's primarily for promoting the cross access east and west as you have discussed. So really a few things that we noted on top of that is C1 is generally less intensive of a zone. Some of the uses permitted in the SDD district are a little higher in use. Not a lot, but a little bit higher. And then we believe that, as outlined in Tricia's letter, the site does meet the justifications for the rezone and will be complementary with the surrounding uses in the neighborhood already. Moving on to site plan, as mentioned, we plan on removing the currently vacant building. We'll be clearing the site, new asphalt, new building, new sidewalks, new parking, consolidating the currently 2 driveways onto Lake Michigan. Right now they're on the edge of the property, so they're kind of close to Mr. Car Wash and the Flagstar Bank to the north. So we're going to be centering that driveway, and that just really helps with traffic conflicts. You have less conflict because people may be taking a left out of Mr. Car Wash right out of our site. Gives people a little bit more time to move. In total, the building is going to be 4,232 square feet. It's for a medical office building called Well Now Urgent Care. Parking-wise, we have 37 spaces. There's a sidewalk connection to the existing sidewalk along the right-of-way. We'll make sure that right-of-way sidewalk has the correct stamping or flagging that you'd like to see, Mr. Connors. We'll also be enhancing the landscaping. We're providing 20 trees across the site, various shrubs, grasses, additional plantings to really, really beautify the site and make it look good. A few of the comments that were brought up, I think the yield sign is a great idea. As you mentioned, that I don't see any reason why we can't commit to that. We'll go ahead and put a yield sign on the movement going east and west across, just so people coming into the site, they keep moving. Anybody that's going to be exiting or crossing there is aware that that traffic's moving in. Regarding the wetlands, yeah, we definitely will get a new wetland survey. The only tricky part is right now it's kind of hard to get someone out there to identify wetlands when there's 6 inches of snow and all the plants are dead. So we're going to basically treat it as if it's wetlands and move forward. And then if it turns out it's not wetlands, pending a wetland mitigation survey, all the better for us. We don't got to deal with wetlands, but we are considering them wetlands now, and want to be sensitive to that. The note on drainage that would be to the north. I think there's no problem putting in a culvert or two, just to make sure there's no ponding to the north of us. Everything get under that road, and we'll not be impacting our neighbors in any negative fashion. So with that, I would just like to say we're excited to keep working here within Walker, and I'll invite Mr. Wynn up to discuss the building architecture. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Bo Wynn, Detroit Architectural Group. Address is 1644 Ford Avenue, Wyandotte, Michigan. Tricia, I don't know if you're driving on the screen. Could you pull up those elevations just a moment? I'd love to speak to those. And just to give you a little background, a little bit of history on the facade of this, I'd like to take credit for the design. It's a pretty handsome, nice design. Unfortunately, it's not mine. Well, unfortunately, fortunately. But this is driven by the company. This is their brand image. And this is a sister arm of a dental operation that you may know called Aspen Dental. You've probably seen their commercials all over the place. Very similar facade. I don't know if you have the facade available. There we go. Where Well now has a lot of the red hues on the awnings, the coping and such. Aspen Dental has the blue. That's kind of their brand ID. Where we have the flat arches across the top, Aspen Dental has the round arced arches. One of their brand elements is, of course, if you could scroll down just a little bit, and on the sides as well, you'll see the mountain peaks that are scribed into the side. Aspen Dental, Aspen, Colorado, hence the mountains. That's been their McDonald's arches, per se. We've done these all over the Midwest and Northeast, and we've done these all with this type of motif. This is their brand ID. Had I known that we weren't allowed to go with any EFS, I probably would have taken some action. As we spoke before the meeting, we just did the Starbucks that's a couple doors down, and that Starbucks is masonry on the bottom because we're in Michigan and snow and salt and elements, and then it has another 40-ish% on the top that is EFS, and that's almost done in construction. So we thought that we could take the same approach with that one. And I would ask, I know that, and this is not a pitch for EFS, as an architect, I know that the industry's come a long, long way. We started back in the late 70s, early 80s with EFS, and it kind of has a bad rap sometimes, I think. It's come a long way with the polymers and the mastics and the binders and everything. I think part due to installation and people not being educated when they install that product, using a platinum level instead of a gold level, or doing all the shortcuts, because we've used EFS on a number of occasions, buildings all over America, and they've stood the test of time with our spec, with our detail, with our execution in the field. But indeed, when you're using it close to the ground, not a great product to use. Hands touch, people can stab it. It is subject to abuse and those kind of things. So that's why we kind of keep it up high. And so I don't know if it's even possible to get leniency on the EFS at all. If that's a possibility, I would ask. I'm trying to do my client a service to try to keep their brand identity alive and vibrant. We've not done one with brick. I don't know how we could describe the mountains in the facade and do all those kind of things if it's just going to be brick up top there. So I don't know if that's something that we could address right now, Tricia, or?
So if I may, Terry, the condition is to allow the applicant to work with staff on an acceptable facade drawing. And so I vaguely remember the Starbucks conversation and meeting you guys in the middle with the ephes, because the ordinance allows for, like decorative features, but not as a primary facade material. And I think there's a percentage too. So I can certainly take a look at that, but it's up to the planning commission if they, will allow staff to handle that.
Great, that'd be great. Yeah, I think it was like a 60-40 split. I think Starbucks even had some wood panels that we utilized. I would also just, perhaps we could even do brick on the flat portions, but the arches where it says well now, we could just even do those out of ephes and some of the piers, and then do the balance of the building out of brick. That would be easier. I think that would better meet your ordinance if we're willing to go that way too. So I guess the next steps would be to try to give you something, pitch something to you, and then you can see if it passes muster.
Yes, that would be if the planning commission is comfortable with that condition. Yep.
I guess somebody needs to show me where there's arches and there's mountains on this elevation, because I don't see mountains and I don't see any arches.
Well, Tom, I hope I didn't confuse you. So this one doesn't have the arches, but the sister company, Aspen Dental, has the arches instead of the flat. Instead of the uppermost towerish part in the middle above the well, now that's flat. But if it was an Aspen Dental, it'd be colored blue and it would have a round arch on top. So this is their sister urgent care. Aspen Dental does all the dental, and then the well now does the medical urgent care portion.
So this has triangles, so that's their idea of a mountain is the peaks?
That is their idea of the mountains and the peaks.
Whew.
When it's arched, it's a little more, these are just flat, straight peaks, but yeah. Whatever. Right.
Traffic driving by there won't be seeing the mountain.
Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen in this building. Who's going to be there, who the workers are. You got x-ray, you got lab. What are your hours?
Exactly
How many
right.
people are going to come through there?
I don't know the amount of people that frequent. I don't know, Mitch, if you have that handy. We can get that information for you. But it is essentially an urgent care with x-ray, with lab, and I think they typically have 6 to 7 exam rooms, lobby area, administrative area, support facilities.
Hours?
8 to 8.
Pardon?
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And you'd have 2 or 3 doctors, physician's assistants, nurses?
Yeah,
What-
two doctors on staff with several assistants, yeah.
They're looking for part-time help.
Yeah. This is a franchise operation, I believe, so they do get local doctors to take these on. And oh, that's okay, Joe.
Yeah.
We'll get you a deal, Joe.
He lives close. He is a doctor. I'm serious.
Any other comments or questions for either Mitchell or Bo? Okay. I think at this point, we'll open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Tyler, supported by Steve to open the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Public hearing is open. Okay.
Public.
We have one public, he's declining to offer comment, so.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Motion by Steve, supported by Tyler to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, Pat, you had raised a point with regard to that traffic movement. And it sounds like the applicant is willing to go that route. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, anything that either, whatever is determined, if it's just lines on the road or if it's a sign or whatever, that's great to know that they're willing to do something, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably something I have Scott work with them as far as how that might be accomplished.
Yeah, and this might start a trend with some neighboring lots too as they become connected, because one property owner might see how it feels a little safer there than it does on their lot. And, on these private pieces of property, they can kind of do whatever they want, really. So,
The site plan says that both of them are future connections, so are we putting signs up when there is no connection?
I think you're right, Tom. So right now they're physically not connected, but the easements are there. So when some of these properties that are along that stretch, when they propose redevelopment or improvements and they have to come to the planning commission, you know, that's when we will make the recommendation to open it up for the cross access.
I guess on that note, we've kind of let our guard down over the years with, we'll get the easement, but we won't make them build it to the property line. And, you know, we really should have been making people build these right to the property line. So we're gonna have a little glitch in trying to get that worked out. The city might be able to step in, the Standale DDA might be able to step in. That'd be a little bit easier. But there's no mechanism other than, like Tricia said, redevelopment to make them go out and do that. Unless we go back and we could probably find some, maybe there's a condition that was talked about at the meeting when those were approved or something, but.
Well, that might be a good idea. Go back and look.
But, you know, we've always said, it's hard to make somebody come in after the fact and spend money, because it will cost money.
Yep.
I guess I would lean towards having the DDA do it organized with some looking at of signage as necessary, rather than putting two signs up now where there's not a connection.
And we just had the car wash in here, 2 years ago, so we
Yeah.
could have hit them up then. Because their exit out of that car wash is right into that cross access.
Well, we did hit them up and there was quite a debate. They weren't real happy about it, but, you know, we said it's a corridor access management plan. It's not just for them, it's for the other 100 businesses that are out there. And I believe they have the easement in place, correct?
So, yeah, bring up a good point, Tom, in terms of actually implementation and timing, and that coordination with DDA is excellent idea as well. And it would perhaps be able to give more consistency of what type of sign you use all along that stretch. And that, again, that's where the DDA probably really comes into play too.
And I would further say that I think the DDA has some funds available, and once they get done with their streetscaping, street lighting project that they're working on, this would probably be a good one to start to invest some time and energy in.
And they're redeveloping their development plan, which has a list of different projects that would occur within the boundaries. So they have a little bit more leniency than the city does to step in and provide some guidance and maybe even some financial support.
Okay, any other comments you had, Pat? Mark, any comments to offer?
I think it's a good project. I'm comfortable with staff working with the developer on the facade.
Okay, very good. Tyler?
I'm glad to see that building going. That thing's an eyesore, the whole place is an eyesore, and this looks like a nice development, and as long as I can work with staff on the EFS, if you can't get along, you're gonna have to come back here probably, so.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I agree. It looks like a good project. That access off to the West Town connector, I think, is a nice feature as well. That gives people, especially in this case for medical service, if they want to stay off Lake Michigan Drive or even Wilson, they have that option. So it looks good.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I'm looking forward to having this. I think it's a really good project for that area, be a great asset for the Standale community, so I'm set.
Tom, anything to add? Okay, Joe? All right. Well, we're at a point, again, the first action is to deal with the rezone request. Tricia's offered some good rationale as far as supporting it, and that's the staff recommendation coming forward. Anyone ready to offer a motion on this?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for case number 21-035. Motion for 4290 Lake Michigan Drive rezone from SDD to C1. I make a motion to recommend approval by the Walker City Commission of the rezone request from SDD Standale Downtown District to C1 local commercial for the parcel located at 4290 Lake Michigan Drive with permanent parcel number 411330201076 based on the findings referenced in the planning director's report dated January 10th, 2022.
Support.
Okay, motion by Tyler, supported by Steve, to recommend to the city commission approval of the proposed rezoning. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we have, the site plan is before us as well.
I can make a motion to approve the site plan for a well-now urgent care center medical office at 4290 Lake Michigan Drive per the plan set last revision dated 1/4/2022, subject to the following conditions. The approval of the site plan shall not take effect until after the city commission approves the rezone request from SDE to C1. The applicant shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 1/12/2022. The applicant shall revise the architectural plans to provide an acceptable material in place of the proposed facade material for review and approval by staff prior to the issuance of a building permit, subject to ongoing discussions with staff. The applicant shall provide 3 sealed sets of civil engineered plans incorporating the recommended revisions to the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Support.
Motion and support, and I'm sorry if I wasn't following close enough. Did you also address the cross-access?
I did not. It sounded like we were kind of heading the direction to let the DDA put their hands on that one, more so than us. But if folks feel otherwise, let me know.
Okay, all right. We've got a motion and support to approve the proposed site plan for this. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. You're on a tight ship.
And Pat, if it helps, we are at all the DDA meetings, so we'll make sure that that gets discussed thoroughly. And
Whatever we do there, we should also then carry on further east on that section too.
we'll certainly impress that on them.
Yeah, I would expect that to be a holistic discussion for that part of Standale.
I would have liked to see this right next to Walgreens, so I'd rather see it there than on Lake Michigan Drive. But
We'll be in touch, guys.
that's just my own personal.
Would have been,
Yeah.
would have been better than O'Reilly's.
Visibility.
I know, I get it. I was just trying to think of downtown Standale. I'm like, okay, we got
I
a
know what we've all been waiting for.
rather see like a department store or something, and something that would bring people rather than sickness.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
All right, so
we all done?
this is a Scott show. So,
Just need to close out a few of these things because I've got, like, at the very bottom.
Stormwater, it's wintertime, we're in stormwater.
We talk about stormwater every meeting.
Are you logged in as you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the problem.
Here, let me log.
Are we up to 500 years
Go
storm?
into the normal guest.
Yeah, the one they had open, Hancock last year.
10 billion year storm, we got dinosaur tracks. Cow gas.
Okay, so real brief presentation here. You guys have had this presentation before, so I don't want to bore you with going through 10 or 15 different slides. What I did was I pulled a handful of slides out of some presentations we've given in the past, just to kind of hit the high points for you. We've had a lot of talk here, so. So this is the timeline that we showed you last time, and the only reason I do this is to show you how long this has been in the works. And if you look back to 2008, that's when we began writing this current version of the ordinance, and it's been a casualty of governor's race one time, and then some stakeholder groups and some fighting in Lansing, and I think we renamed the DEQ twice during this period, so there's been an awful lot that's been going on. And then, of course, with COVID, this was all supposed to be approved and in place before COVID started, and then once that happened, we knew there was a big delay. So we're at the point now where last December, or this past December, we finally did get authorized by the state, and we approved the ordinance, and we're looking at February 1st now as the day that we're going to start to enforce it. So we're right on the cusp of changing kind of how we treat stormwater quality and stormwater quantity. So what was a proposed model stormwater ordinance before is no longer proposed. This is the real deal. Maybe for background, it's a Kent County model ordinance, but we have different partners. Ottawa County's a partner, Muskegon County and Allegan County are also involved. So what our hope is that when design engineers come in here, they don't say, I've never heard of this before. They say, I've done it 1,000 times. And that's going to make it easier for everybody. The main change that you're going to see, and that we've been preaching, is not about detention or anything like that. It's going to be about this idea of channel protection. And the way that we handle stormwater now, or in the past, has been if you want to take a 10-acre site that's all wooded and you want to put a neighborhood on it, or you want to put a factory on it, we know that the rain that comes down is going to hit hard surfaces and it's going to run off a lot faster. So the way we do that is we capture it in a pond, we put a small outlet on the pond, and we say that's good because the water is coming out at a rate probably less than it would by nature. The problem is instead of in nature, maybe the water is going to come out for 6 hours, but if you put a detention pond in, it's going to do it for 24 hours or 48 hours. So you're going to have a smaller outflow over a longer period of time. And what the state and the EPA have said is, you people aren't taking into account this channel, bank channel protection criteria, because if the water's running for a lot longer, then you're degrading the creeks that are downstream and the drains that are downstream. And part of the reason that timeline was there is because we've been arguing about that. Because what this is going to do is it's going to make it very, very difficult for development, because you cannot increase the runoff volume or the runoff rate. Runoff rate, easy, we've been doing that forever. Runoff volume is different. So now the water that would leave the forested site in a 2-year storm, if you put a neighborhood on it, that water has to be absorbed somewhere. It could be, you might require that all of the roof drains go into barrels, and that the barrel volume can count, and it can be used for gardening and things like that, car washes. I don't know that society's ready for all that. It could be green roofs on apartment complexes. It could be that you have a sandy site and you can thaw the water back in the ground. That would be great. We don't have a lot of that. So we're going to start to run into some challenges. And the few developments that I've looked at already, every engineer is tweaking the rules and trying to find their way around this. And it's kind of exactly like we suspected. It's going to be a fight every step of the way. So we did create something when we were working with the state through that stakeholders group, so that if they absolutely can't do the things that need to be done for this volume, they could use what's called extended detention. And that's going to be another big pond, but it's going to be spreading that release out over a 72-hour period. And so this flow chart here is not so much to walk through as to say, step one is where they have to come in and try to calculate if they're putting this water back in the ground. And if they absolutely can't do everything that's listed in here, like rain gardens and bioswales and infiltration trenches, pervious pavement, green roofs, all that, then they'll finally work their way down to a spot where they could just do a big detention pond over 72 hours. But that is the last option and not the first option. So again, everybody that's come in so far has just come right to the last option because it's easy. We have to fight with them a little bit about it and say, you've got to try some of these things. So you're going to start to see people be more creative with how they capture water in parking lots, how they capture water off roofs, and we're going to have to be a little flexible, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit along the way. Another key thing here is that there are no variance procedures for the water quality stuff. Now, they didn't speak to the water quantity, which is really the stuff we're concerned about mostly, is flooding. In Walker, we've been very, very concerned about that for a long time. In fact, if you go back far enough, the Planning Commission had a moratorium on development for a while because we had a lot of flooding in Chesterfield Heights. We couldn't get it under control. And so we have a history of saying we care a lot about that. Now, when it comes to the quality, we're going to have to say in a meeting like we had tonight with the Med Center, if they can't meet those quality requirements, there is no come back to the Planning Commission and ask for forgiveness. They just have to meet it. There's no way around it. So it's going to be a little bit tougher when it comes to dealing with staff. And then when it comes to detention, we're still going to require that there's a 100-year detention for flood control on every site. Unless the City Commission and Planning Commission thinks that's excessive, I think we've at staff level, we had our marching orders 15, 20 years ago that you absolutely must have the 100-year storm, so we're still going to do that. Now, one of the catches is that we probably still could have some variances that we could talk about for volume, for detention. we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And maybe a good example is like the Betts site over on Bristol. They've had addition after addition over the years. It's all rooftop and all pavement. So when they put another rooftop where there was a pavement before, we found ways to be a little bit more flexible. We've said deal with the water quality, but we're not going to make you eliminate or reduce pavement or rooftop. And again, the one change with the 100 year is that it's so minor. We're going from 6.25 inches to 6.3 inches over a 100-year storm. So for the most part, that stuff stays exactly the way it is. We're in good shape. So that's it. That's a quick summary.
So, when you were talking about this before, you mentioned that there'd be no longer a variance procedure to go to the planning commission.
And that's true, but the more we look at it, the more we feel like we still could consider variances related to the rainfalls above a 2-year storm. So in a calculation, if somebody's redeveloping a site and they say, I can only get to the 25-year storm, we might be able to talk with them about that and come in and I think we could find some forgiveness.
And that's on a redevelopment of an existing site?
Well, I say redevelopment because that's where we've found our flexibility in the past. There's also, it's a little sticky with redevelopment because I think, like, as you saw today, developer came in and said, less impervious, no detention required. Well, that's not really true because they still have to be able to prove that all the math works, that the pipes can handle the water, and I think they have a little bit of trouble here. And we want to make sure that if water runs to the north for half the site and to the south for half the site, that we mimic that, and it's developed the same way. And you're going to see that when we talk about the Lincoln Lawns development because they were rerouting water all over the place, and that was one of the biggest concerns. So we said you can't freelance this. I mean, you got to determine which way it went before, and that's your pre-development condition. You have to make sure that you don't increase the rate or the volume for that 1-inch storm or 2-inch storm. So
you're going to end up with multiple detention ponds on these sites then?
we could. What would be smart is if they would try to mimic that in a bit of a creative way. You can change the boundaries within the site, but the tributary areas should be pretty similar. Or if you're gonna add more flow to an area, it should be an area that we know that there's no flooding concerns and the downstream sewers are oversized. Like in this case, I think their first try, they routed all the water to the north to Lake Michigan Drive, and there was like an 8 or 10-inch pipe there. And we said, there's no way MDOT's going to allow you to change that and put all of that extra water out there without any detention, because they're worried that the catch basin will fill up, there'll be water in the road, somebody comes through there at 50 miles an hour, hydroplanes, hits a pole, who knows what. So more challenges ahead.
The 6.5-inch storm, that happens once in 100 years, that's the idea? Over a week or 2 days? Or?
If I say it on video, if I agree, I think I'll get punished by the engineering gods. We call it a 100-year storm, but they now call it the 1% storm. There's a 1% chance that it could happen in any given year. Technically, it's the 100-year storm by my book.
But over a week? Or
over a 24-hour period.
24.
So for design periods, we look at 1 day essentially, and the 100-year storm, the 1% storm, is 6.3 inches over that period.
A real storm.
So, but we see 100-year intensity storms all the time. You might get 3 inches of rain in 20 minutes. Well, if you look at the intensity charts that we have, that's off the charts, and those kinds of things do happen. And we try to design the storm sewers all so that they can handle a 10-year storm without having water shooting out of them. But we allow, the 10-year storm, then you have the assumption that there will be some water in roads, there will be some water in parking lots, but we want to protect the buildings for up to the 100-year storm. That's kind of part of the design forgiveness.
My son-in-law just got a job at Ottawa County for this particular type of field. He just graduated from Grand Valley. So I just told him, hey, better get up on this ordinance.
We'll see him around.
Yeah. He starts in 2 weeks.
Good.
Great.
So this isn't something we'll stop talking about. It'll be in our
We
face.
never stop talking about water.
No, and we shouldn't. It's too important. We learned that lesson in the 90s, and I don't see this community changing.
Well, I think from my standpoint, I've always felt uncomfortable dealing with the variances on the prior regulations. And so if there are gonna be responsibilities for the planning commission to act on something in accord with this ordinance, whatever background and information you can provide us ahead of time, I think we'll all feel better when we're put in a position of making a decision on it.
Yeah, well, my hope is that even on some redevelopments, and I'll use the Kmart site as an example, is that we can still catch up for some of the sins of the past. And the Kmart site was an old, what was the theater, Star Theater? I think maybe, it was all paved, all rooftop, and we had tons of flooding in Alpine Avenue right there. And we said, we're not gonna, every single development that comes in here, we're gonna get caught back up again. And, you know, as we started to get caught up on some of the new commercial restaurants, maybe had underground detention, or apartments that ended up having detention. Alpine Summit came in where the Kmart was, they put in their detention, and we've seen an improvement downstream. It's not perfect, but we haven't had a situation where Alpine Avenue has been closed since that was developed, which is, you know, pretty important. Tom's gonna say something.
We, as in the road commission, also found out what was wrong with the Alpine Avenue storms. The outlet to that was like a 15-inch, and they had a 36-inch going into, so I think we sandbagged and did some things to slow it down so it didn't get to the bottom.
Okay.
And then I'll try and.
Well, there was some drain commission work done as well. We've taken a double barrel approach a few times where if one pipe's not enough, two's gotta be better. And, but I think that the idea being, we're gonna continue to push, and hopefully you'll understand that when we get a redevelopment like that, we gotta address the detention, at least to some extent. And that's where maybe you can say, hey, 100-year maybe is a little bit excessive, but you gotta have some detention, 25-year, 10-year, something like that. This site was pretty small today, so I don't know that it was really gonna be worth it. You'd end up with a puddle with a 1-inch hole as an outlet, which was plugged the first time it rained. But we get to these bigger sites, we'll continue to talk about it.
Well, the problem with the variance is that they would just say, we want one, and it's like, well, demonstrate and tell us why it's warranted, not just, yeah, we want one, give us one.
Scott, can you send me that presentation?
I can.
Do you see that developer that is doing English Hills, bought another golf course in Wyoming? They're gonna do it in 3 years,
They bought the Pines.
the Pines.
Oh, they did?
Well, that's what I saw on
Yeah, that's-
social media, Facebook, I don't, you know.
Yeah, it's in the news.
What TV is on there.
All the golf courses are getting bought up.
Yeah, cause nobody's golfing.
Well, I don't know about that, but the Pines was a viable golf course. They're gonna get a little bit more pushback than they did, at least from the golfers.
Yeah.
And golfers just gotta go there more often.
Let's get going here.
Well, since COVID, golf's gone way up.
Theory, you're talking about the Alpine 4.
Okay.
It was a Goodrich Theater, wasn't it?
Takes too long, costs too much.
Wasn't it a Goodrich Theater?
I'm not sure, I remember it was like the dollar theater, right? That's what it was.
We have one more item on the agenda, and it's up to you guys if you want to postpone it or still elect officers. I mean, you could make Scott and Jason something they don't want.
That's what we do every year with Jason, right? he's always gone, and we always make him secretary.
All right, okay, do we want to take action this evening?
Might as well.
I just as soon I mean, if I would just as soon reappoint the same folks to the same positions unless someone has any
Support.
gripe with
I
that.
haven't even had a chance to campaign.
What do you wanna be?
Are you running for a state representative?
Yeah.
Is that a motion then?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the same board leadership.
I agree.
There's
I'll
motion and
support it.
Okay.
Now's your chance to
Are you
argue
will-
why you don't want it.
Yeah, now you can argue.
Yeah, I haven't even talked to you about it. Are you willing? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm agree. Let's go.
all right, and I think Jason, yep, he just said that he was interested too.
He seems excited about it.
So,
never not had quorum, so.
I want to be secretary.
I'm fine with it, so.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor to reappoint the existing officers. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
What's next? Tricia?
Sorry, yes, we have a meeting on February 2nd, 2/2/22. It's going to be an exciting day.
No more than 2 items.
Yeah. We have the item that we were supposed to have on the 5th, and that's that Chipotle and the retail space over within the Westtown PUD. And then we also have the Meyer corporate office is proposing an asset protection accessory building. And so that's kind of a small one, but it has to go on the PC. It's like security.
So they have a little security booth that's over by the distribution center.
Yeah,
now, but
distribution
it's literally
center.
like it's
More of a headquarters.
it's about the amount of space they've got for that.
Oh, I know
block of
where it
chairs.
is, and I know what it is. So they're making it bigger?
They're gonna do a little minor maintenance on their security vehicles in there, but they're gonna have all the right infrastructure in place, it looks like, so.
A bigger building to put vehicles in and stuff like that?
It's gonna be the size of a small pole barn. You know, they're gonna have,
Where's that gonna go then?
Right behind the corporate office. There's a vacant parcel behind there. They've got to do some parcel reconfiguration, boundary changes, so that this thing isn't a standalone building on a vacant parcel.
So which, they've got 3 corporate offices over there. Which one are you talking
Oh, on Walker?
the one with the Fred statue.
There's one on each side, and then plus the old one, the first one that was there has been being renovated.
The plans are on our website, so
It's the one with the Fred statue across from the Meyer
North
gas
of 3
station.
Mile?
Okay.
Okay, so it's the one on the.
With the houses and
North side.
south of 3 Mile.
South of 3 miles, so that's southwest.
where the 2 rental houses on Walker used to be,
I think so.
against the highway?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the creek.
So you're saying
Yeah.
the part where it's across from the
Oh,
I think so.
I don't know.
I don't know. They're
I wanna
talking
go home.
about 3 different places.
Maybe you'll just have to wait and see when the packet's published.
North of 3 Mile, that's
Are we gonna have a meeting on the 16th?
Of February?
Yeah.
We didn't get any applications.
Oh, good, because I'll be in Cancun.
Rub it in our
You can work from home, so you can do work from Cancun.
No, I can't. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you.